guys, welcome to another episode, and this one's all about time lapses. I've got my camera set up over there, and it's taking stills of this big power plant that's in The Hague. And this power plant is a really imposing structure on the skyline, which has a lot of interest with the two smokestacks sticking out of the roof. And time lapses work really well with it, I think, because the clouds can move past this high building, and trams can also move left and right in front of it. So it makes for a really nice time lapse, I think. It's an industrial feel, so for stock photography it's good to do themes with industry, global warming, climate change, that kind of thing. And the time lapse that I'm doing with this stills camera is I'm taking multiple stills every 5 seconds, and to do that I have put the camera in manual mode. I've put the white balance on daylight, and I've put the focus also on manual, so if there's any distracting movement in front or behind the subject that I'm trying to photograph, just might be a bit dark, a bit overexposed there. If there's movement in front or behind it, the focus will stay true to the subject that I want to focus on. And there's a couple of different ways you can do time lapses. One is this way, and what I've got is an intervalometer, and I've set the intervalometer to take a photo every 5 seconds for 300 shots. But you can have it for how many shots you want until the battery runs out on the camera or the intervalometer. So that's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is by just taking like a 15-minute or a 30-minute video, and then in post speeding that video up. It's the quick and dirty method. The disadvantage of that is it's difficult to edit the individual frames, whereas with the stills camera that I'm using now, in post I can edit the shot and migrate that edit to every single frame that I want to have that edit to, and it gives a better quality to the image or the video. A third way of doing a time lapse is the in-camera function. My Canon 70D doesn't have that, so therefore I'm using the intervalometer, and it's a wireless intervalometer which I got just recently, and it seems to be doing a pretty good job. Or if you have a camera that has an internal function of doing time lapses, such as my Panasonic FZ300, then you can do the time lapse in camera, and you can set the time lapse for every 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 or 20 seconds, and you can also set it for how many shots you want, or for the amount of time that you want to take the photos. Yeah, I think also a ND filter is really handy to have when doing a time lapse, because it just slows and smooths the movement of the clouds or the objects that are moving around the subject that you're photographing, and it smooths out the video. Yeah, so that's just a couple of ideas about time lapses. I'm just going to wait for the shots to finish on my 70D of this interesting piece of architecture of The Hague, and then after this we'll go back and take the images into Lightroom. Okay, so I've got the photos now, and I make sure that I click all photos so that all the photos are imported. I've got a couple of strays here, so I'll deal with them in a second. First of all, I'll import them, and that'll take a minute or so. Okay, so we've imported the individual photo files that we need for our time lapse. Got a couple of stragglers here, so I'll just delete them. Remove photos, delete from disk. And here we are, we've got I think it's about 497 photos down here. It says 497 individual photos of the power station. And what we need to do is, I want to just go into the first file and see if I can enhance it. But first of all, what I didn't explain when I was out in the field doing the time lapse was that it's always good to put your camera in 16:9 aspect ratio. So if you look here, it's got the aspect here, and if I click on the original arrow, we've got the 16:9, and that fits 1080 high definition videos. And we're doing a time lapse to make a video, so it's best if the photo fits in the video dimensions. But I put the camera in a 16:9 aspect ratio to start with, so I don't have to change that. I will change the horizon a little bit. It's a little bit wonky there, so I've just changed that. I've shot this in JPEG. JPEG just uses up a lot less space on my hard drive, and I made sure that I got the exposure exactly how I wanted it by looking at the histogram. If you look up here to the histogram, it's well to the right, but nothing is overexposed, nothing is blown out, so that's a good exposure. But having said that, I would like to just enhance that blue sky a little bit more. So I'll go to vibrancy here and knock that up to about 18, not too much, otherwise it looks artificial. And it also brings the colors up within the building itself, and it's nice and sharp. And what else do we want to do with this? Maybe bring the highlights down a touch. And I look at the histogram here, and it's a bit light on the, it's a bit to the right, so I'm just going to bring the blacks down a little bit to bring more definition in the structure, so that makes it pop a bit more. And the whites are well exposed in the clouds. You see the detail, and they're not blown out or anything, so I think I'll leave that. So what I want to do now is I want to create the same characteristics of this photo edit for the entire 497. So what I do is I go down to the bottom here and I move this slider all the way to the right, and then I hit arrow or shift and then click it, and that highlights everything. And then what I do next is I hit sync and then check all and then synchronize, and that will put that edit into all of the photos. So it'll enhance the sky, it'll bring up the blacks, and just make the photo pop a bit more. And so that'll be for all of those photos now, so that means the entire video will be consistent with its colors and characteristics of the photo. Okay, that's done now. And so we've edited the time-lapse photos now. So if you look here, it's got those two square boxes. That means those changes have applied to all of the photos. And I leave it highlighted, and then I go to the slideshow tab. Now, I don't have the latest version of Lightroom. I only have Lightroom 5.7. So in order for me to export this slideshow as a video, I had to import a template preset, and I'll put the details of the preset that I used, and I think it's from it's called lightroomblog.com, and this preset works really well for earlier versions of Lightroom that are earlier than the current Creative Cloud model. If you're in the Creative Cloud model, you can relatively easily export your time-lapse photos and create videos, but with these earlier versions of Lightroom, it's not so easy. So I've imported that preset, Lightroom 5 time-lapse, and that will allow me to export as a video. So I export it as a video, I give it a name, and time lapse for YouTube, oops, video, and I will save it to the folder, power plant for YouTube. Yep, and then I will make sure that I export it as a 1080p. With this preset, the frame rate, it only is possible to export this at 29 frames per second and at 1080. If you don't do it at 1080, then you only have a lower resolution 720, 640 and 480 to choose from. You don't have the option of choosing 4K, but for these purposes that's fine for me. Okay, so I'll export it now, and that will take quite a while to export that. And luckily I've done one earlier, and we can go to that now. And it exports it as a MP4 file, and it's 49 megabytes in size. Okay, so that's how I create a time lapse using my still camera. And I hope you got something out of it. I enjoyed making the video. If you did enjoy it, please feel free to subscribe and hit the notification button if you haven't already done so. And also give this video a like. That'll help me greatly in monetizing my channel. Thanks a lot guys, and I'll see you next week.